lecture in the Principles of Ecology, where we will look at recycling matter. I'm Wendy Nafke, and I'll be giving your presentation today. Matter is constantly recycled through the ecosystem, and we call these biogeochemical cycles. So this is going to include water and chemicals that are continually recycled through both biotic and abiotic components. Some of the things are going to hold the matter for a longer period of time, and some will hold it for a shorter period of time. An exchange pool is going to hold the water or the element for a relatively short period of time. This is things like water in the atmosphere, because that will eventually turn to rain. A reservoir will hold the water or element for a long period of time. This is things like water in the ocean, where it's going to be in the ocean for many, many years. When we look at the water cycle, it's going to include things on the earth, above the earth, and below the earth. This diagram here shows that you have water storage in the atmosphere. It comes down as precipitation. It can turn into groundwater. It can go into springs, into freshwater storage, run into the ocean, and then it will return back into the atmosphere through evaporation. You can also have plants release water into the atmosphere through transpiration, and you can have snowmelt contribute to the runoff, and then just groundwater evaporate as well. Evaporation is when the surface water changes to water vapor. Sublimation is going to be when you have frozen or solid water, such as ice or snow, change directly to water vapor. It does not pass through a liquid state. Transpiration is going to be when the plants release the water vapor through the stomata. The stomata are the pores in the plants that will allow water vapor and gases to go in and out. Condensation is the process of water vapor turning into droplets or liquid. And then precipitation is when water falls from the atmosphere, and it can be in the form of rain, snow, hail, or freezing rain. When we look at groundwater and runoff, runoff is the precipitation that falls on the land and flows over the ground to the surface. Groundwater will be that precipitation that falls on the land and then soaks into the ground. Some of it may seep out of the ground in a spring or into the ocean, and some of it will go into aquifers. The aquifers are the underground water that stores, the underground rock that stores water. Here we have the carbon cycle, and you can see you've got pollution that's going to increase the amount of carbon in the air, in the atmosphere. It will go through gas exchange. Some of it can go into the ground, into the limestone. Some of it comes down into the ground and gets consumed through photosynthesis. The photosynthesis will create your plants. Those will get consumed by animals that will release more carbon dioxide back into the air. You can also have coal or oil, your fossil fuels, that can be burnt and will also release carbon into the air. And then you'll have decomposition of plant and animal matters that over long periods of time will turn into carbon that's stored in the earth as your coal or oil. So flowing water is going to quickly dissolve the sedimentary rock, and then it ends up in the ocean where it's stored for years. So the carbon that ends up out there can be in the ocean for long periods of time. The cycles between the organisms in the atmosphere are going to change pretty quickly between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So it can be a matter of weeks. When you have the animal consume the product, they're going to release the carbon dioxide into the air, and then the plant can actually use that carbon dioxide right away and go back into the animal as food later on. So some of the cycles will slowly progress through the geological processes through sedimentation. So the time period to go from decomposition to being coal or oil, those are going to be much lengthier processes. Nitrogen also has a cycle in nitrogen fixation. 78% of the Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen, and it's going to move through abiotic and biotic parts of the ecosystem. With nitrogen fixation, it's going to convert the nitrogen gas in the air to nitrates, and this is carried out by nitrogen-fixing bacteria that live in the soil and the roots of the legumes. The nitrifying bacteria are going to change ammonium ions from the dead organisms into nitrates, which are used by plants and then change back to gas by denitrifying bacteria. So when you put fertilizer, such as dead organisms, into the soil, it is going to require bacteria that will convert those ammonium ions from those dead organisms into the nitrates to be able to be used by the plant matter. And this shows the nitrogen cycle here. So we'll start with your plant that's going to use nitrogen. It's going to be taken up in the roots from the soil. That plant gets eaten by the cow. The cow will eventually die, decompose, or is eaten by somebody else who eventually dies and decomposes and releases nitrogen back into the soil. The bacteria will break it down, and the plant will be able to use it again. Some of it is released into the atmosphere by bacteria in the soil as nitrogen gas, and then bacteria will also take that nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and convert it into nitrogen that is usable in the soil.